About here at 5:30, and welcome everybody. And I see a few short sleeve shirts. I think we're gonna be wearing long sleeve next month. Or anyway, Julie, we would appreciate it if you could lead us in the pledge.
Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, thank you much. We was on to item number, our roll call. Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Here.
Division 5, Robert Paris.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias.
Here.
Division 1, Drew Mercy.
Here.
Division 3, Frank Donato.
Here.
Division 4, George Lane.
Here.
General Manager Knudsen.
Here.
General Counsel Martin.
Here.
And Holly Hughes, President.
Thank you. That'll bring us to the next item. Voluntary public roll call. We always like to hear from those that may be listening in, and do we have any people listening in like to identify themselves?
George, it's John Ukestead.
Hey, John, welcome. You're with us.
Yeah, Brent Byrne, Courtsville Water District. Good evening.
Hey, welcome.
Lieutenant Dean of Courtsville Water District.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Ron Chow from County of Los Angeles Water Works.
Great, glad you're with us.
Ben Stewart, Roseville Community Service District.
Welcome. Okay, much appreciated. We've got a nice group of people listening in, and if there's any questions, you're always welcome to voice your questions or comments. We have next item number 5, public comments. Anybody would like to address the board? The item's not further on the agenda. Now's the opportunity to do so. Okay, so Julie and Kyle. Yeah. Okay, thank you. We have a letter. We'll make a copy of that for each board member.
Okay. I spoke with John Calandry yesterday. He wasn't able to make it today, but he asked if I would read a letter on his behalf. President Lane and Board, I have taken the time to review the RFPs and the cost summary of proposal of the applicants for the Water Master Administrator position. I believe each firm's cost proposal to be an estimation with an additional work at additional costs to soon follow. In reviewing the proposed 2-year contracts, Provost and Pritchard will cost the Water Master approximately $20,000 a month and RGS $18,800 per month. I would like to remind everybody that Avek has averaged $10,400 per month for their work in 2024. I have been impressed with the quality of work and professionalism by the entire Avek staff. Their expertise cannot be matched, as they have been involved with the entire adjudication process and judgment to follow. I believe Avek's administrative services to be key to the continued success of the Water Master. Please consider this letter as confirmation of my desire to retain Avek as the Water Master Administrator. Sincerely, John A. Calandry. I just wanted to add that today we had our advisory meeting and there was a lengthy discussion about the candidates. There was not one person on the advisory that expressed any dissatisfaction with Avek or their work whatsoever. The majority vote to not negotiate a contract with either of the applicants was taken, and it was 6 in favor of not negotiating a contract, and 5 said they would look at one of them. It was a lively discussion. It was a good discussion, but in the end, nobody knows this judgment like Avek. Nobody has the expertise. We've got a help us in the valley than to stay as water master administrator. So we would again like you to consider that option. I don't know what that exactly looks like for you. If you have to, if we would need to have you hire somebody else for a part-time position to help out if the workload got too much, but whatever it is, we would surely like to keep you in this position. We've got full trust in you.
Well, thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board?
Yeah, George, this is John Eucastet.
Hey, that's okay.
I'm representative of the Antelope Valley United Water Purveyors.
Yes.
And I made some comments at that meeting today. I'm also on that advisory committee. And my feelings echo what Joy, Mrs. Cal just said. I think Peter and Angel and Patty have done an excellent job. I feel that I've got the support of the 15 mutual water companies that are in the AVAC district, and that they would support if AVAC found it, go ahead and take over this or continue this administration job for the next 2 years. I would support that 100%. I echoed my thoughts to the advisory committee today. There was no objections whatsoever about the job that Peter, Patty, and Angela have been doing. I feel confident in your staff, and if there's any possible way for you to consider taking over that administration's job for the next 2 years, we would back you 100%. Thank you, George.
Yeah, thank you. Very well spoken, very well said. Phelan, you have some comments?
Yes, I agree with John. I agree with Julie. We would like AVEC to vote no on both of the people that have applied for this job. They're nowhere near as good as what we already have, and they're a budget buster. They're going to be double or better on what they've put down. Thank you.
Well, thank you much. Is there anyone else? Yeah, thank you for the comments in the letter.
I have a comment unrelated to the previous discussion.
I missed, who's speaking?
My name is Elizabeth Reed Wainscoat, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Center for Biological Diversity.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Good evening. We, the center, noticed that the district recently signed an agreement with Cadiz. This project would pump groundwater from underneath national parks in the California desert and export it for profit. Federal scientists have said the project would pump up to 25 times more groundwater than the aquifer's annual recharge, threatening harm to the fragile desert environment and springs on which wildlife depends. And this is in direct contradiction to science-based recommendations on water conservation and climate resiliency. Water districts must be planning to increase local supply through recycling, conservation, and rainwater recapture, efforts that will generate high-paying local jobs instead of investing in expensive and destructive water mining projects like Cadiz. Cadiz is not only a bad investment because of the potential environmental harms, it is also important to note that many of the promises that Cadiz is offering you are unsubstantiated. Cadiz says it will provide up to 50,000 acre feet a year. However, the independent United States Geological Survey says that the recharge rate for the aquifer would could be as low as 2,000 acre feet a year, leaving your district without seeing a drop of water from this investment. Furthermore, there are additional administrative barriers to Cadiz achieving its objectives. SB 307, passed in 2019, blocks Cadiz from exporting any water unless it first secures approval from the State Lands Commission. The Commission's review process is 2 years long, and Cadiz has yet to file for this regulatory approval. That is because they cannot meet the standards of the law, which requires them to show that their project will not adversely affect natural or cultural resources. This basically ensures that the Cadiz project as currently proposed will be rejected. And for these reasons, many tribes and community groups and water districts have rejected their proposal. The National Congress of American Indians opposes the project, the LA Department of Water and Power rejected it, and the country's largest water wholesaler, MWD, has rejected it. Cadiz is unlikely to ever be completed, but it would be unsustainable if it ever was. We therefore encourage the district to divest from this project and instead work on projects that guarantee the region more sustainable sources of water long term. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. If you could maybe have your contact information, leave that with our board secretary, we would appreciate that. But AVAC did look at these, and we're not dealing with them. That's not on the table. So, Matt, do you have any comments?
Yeah, good evening, Elizabeth. This is Matt Knudsen. I'm the general manager for AVAC. So, as Director Lane mentioned, we had previously worked or talked to Cadiz. AVAC has an MOU with Cadiz for solely the potential wheeling of water through our system. So we don't currently have any agreements or arrangements with Cadiz, other than we have agreed to look at the possibility of wheeling water to another customer of theirs. So you can reach out to me tomorrow if you'd like, and I can provide you more detail on that.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, thank you. And your comments were very good, and that's some of the same questions that AVAC had originally. But be assured, we're not doing anything to buy water directly from them. Thank you. Is there any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to item number 6, adoption of agenda. So the board order would be in order 6A1.
Mr. President, this Rob, I will move that we adopt the agenda.
We have a motion from Director Parrish.
I'll second.
Second from Director Mercy. If there's no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you. That'll move us on to the consent calendar, item number 7 in 7A1. That approve the minutes of August 27th. And I think we've all had a chance to review those, and if there's no further questions, the motion would be in order.
Move to approve.
We
7A1.
have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Who was the second? Gary was first. Who was the second? Drew? Oh, I did.
I'll second.
Thank you, Drew. Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you. This is a kind of a new item. We're gonna go off agenda a little bit, but AVAC, we have a financing authority. That's something fairly new. It has to do with the High Desert, water bank that we're doing with Metropolitan Water District. And so there's an item, on the agenda. So a motion would be in order to adjourn and go into the High Desert, the financing authority. So we have a motion for that.
Mr. President, I move we adjourn a regular AVEC meeting to convene a special meeting of the AVEC financing.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Mercy
And Mr. President, this Rob, I will second that motion.
and second by Director Parrish. Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. We have one item. It'll take a few minutes and we'll go back to our regular agenda items. Frank, I'll turn it over to you for a moment, and then Matt's.
Yeah, okay, you ready? So That's 8A, it's 8A1. Consider impossible action to adopt the resolution FAR-24-1, resolution of the Board of Directors held by Eastern Water Agency Financing Authority pertaining to the reimbursement of capital expenditures from the bond proceeds for the High Desert Water Bank project. So Samuel Small, Metropolitan District, and Michael Engelbart from Wells Fargo. So are we going to start with Matt first?
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, let's do that.
Matt?
So, thank you, Director Lane, and good evening, Board. So, as Director Donato mentioned, we have Samuel Smalls with Metropolitan Water District, as well as Michael Engelbrecht with Wells Fargo Bank on the line this evening. We also have Jim Markman, who's our attorney, has looked at this as well. And I thought I'd start by giving a little bit of background as to why we're requesting the board consider approval of a resolution that's on page 11 of your board packet this evening. So a little bit of background. Back in December of 2016, AVAC, along with the California Municipal Finance Authority, formed a JPA known as the AVAC Financing Authority. And the purpose back in 2016 was to issue tax-exempt bonds through the CREBs, California Renewable Energy Bonds, and that is for the construction of our various solar facilities back in 2017. So you may recall from late last year, we had discussion amongst the board about Metropolitan Water District's request, the AVAC approval to utilize the existing JPA financing authority that I just spoke about to issue bonds for the High Desert Water Bank project, specifically for the capital cost on the water bank. The said bond proceeds would be used by Metropolitan for payment to AVAC towards the capital cost on the High Desert Water Bank. And this would allow Metropolitan to issue bonds for the capital costs and keep the debt service payments as an operating expense. Metropolitan will be the sole obligor for repayment of the bonds and be responsible for preparing all the legal documents, the offering statement, the pricing and closing of the bonds, as well as preparing and posting the annual continuing disclosure. Down the last bullet there, the issuance of these bonds through the JPA have been delayed until Metropolitan approves the final decision and cost of the treatment technology for the water to be returned to the aqueduct from the High Desert Water Bank, or look at another alternative which avoids treatment altogether. So those talks are ongoing, and that's why back in late 2023 when we talked about issuing bonds, we haven't followed through on that yet. Most likely that will occur in the first or second quarter of 2025. So the request from Metropolitan is to adopt a resolution authorizing the reimbursement of capital expenditures from bond proceeds for the upcoming 2 fiscal years, 24-25 and 25-26. And the reason they're requesting this is to comply with the IRS regulations if the tax-exempt bond proceeds are intended to pay for prior capital expense. So we must adopt this resolution so that Metropolitan can get reimbursed for previous capital expense that they've reimbursed AVAC for on the High Desert Water Bank. The Metropolitan Board adopted a very similar resolution at their October 8th meeting last week. And we're here today to ask the AVAC Board to do the same. We presented this to the Finance Committee last week, and there were a number of questions asked by the Finance Committee. And Director Donato thought it'd be a good idea to highlight some of those questions that were asked by the Finance Committee for the entire board. So the first question was, when will the AVAC Financing Authority approve the issuance of bonds for the High Water Bank? As I mentioned, with the slight delay, Metropolitan is targeting the first or second quarter of 2025. Another question was, what happens to the resolution that we're considering this evening if the bonds are never issued? And the answer is the resolution is only valid if the bonds are issued prior to June 31st of 2026. Oh, June 31st. Sorry. June 31st. AVAC, our third question is, will AVAC and the Financing Authority be indemnified by Metropolitan? Answer is yes. The final legal documents and offering statement will have language indemnifying AVAC and the Financing Authority. And Metropolitan has already provided some proposed language that AVAC's legal counsel has reviewed, and would it be acceptable to the agency? And with that, I can turn it over to Samuel Smalls or Michael Engelbrecht to see if they want to add anything to what was discussed this evening.
Before we do that, let's see if there's any questions from the board.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Matt, I had one question. You mentioned about, if I got this correctly, that by doing these bonds, they could be treated as an operating expense, versus what? If it wasn't an operating expense, what would it be? Capital expenditure?
Yeah, maybe I'll let Samuel answer that question. Did you hear that, Samuel?
I did, Matt, and you did a great job, and makes my job a lot easier. With respect to that question, it's actually bifurcated. So the interest expense on the bonds would be treated as operating, and it's an operating expense, but the capital component or the principal component would be treated as a capital expense for us in terms of accounting treatment. But it has a financial benefit for us just in terms of how the coverage calculations are treated. So that's the bottom line in terms of reason why we're pursuing this and the positive impact it would have for Metropolitan.
Okay. Thank you, Samuel.
Yep.
Mr. President, this is Director Miller. I have a question, or
Yes,
actually,
yes. Go ahead.
I just see the typo of June 31st. There is no June 31st. It's June 30th.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's all I have.
Yeah, that's my bad.
Okay. Are we going to have a presentation from?
Yeah, at this time, since there's no further questions from the board, Samuel or Michael, is there anything you want to add to this discussion?
Actually, I don't think so. I think you covered everything really well. I would just reiterate that this is a perfunctory administrative process that sets the record of the intent of the board to issue bonds as indicated for the purpose of funding the capital costs for the high desert groundwater banking project. And this is required by the IRS if you want to reimburse yourself or Metropolitan in this case wants to be reimbursed for capital expenditures that we made out of cash, out of our operating revenues. So I believe this is something that you have done in the past. It's certainly something that we've done in the past for our own bonds that are issued, and it's pretty common by other municipal entities that uses debt for their capital projects. So there's nothing unusual here. I think it's, as I said, a pretty standard process, and definitely appreciate your consideration and the opportunity to work on this project in collaboration with you. Michael, anything you would like to add?
Sure. Thank you, Sam. This is Michael Engelbrecht with Wells Fargo. Sam is correct in stating that back in 2006, the agent, Avek adopted a very similar resolution because it does allow you to issue taxes and bonds to reimburse cash expenditures for qualified capital improvements. I'm trying to think of any of our municipal clients that don't do something similar, and I can't think of any. This is just an IRS requirement. It's not a commitment. It just allows you to take a look back and replenish cash expenditures that qualify for tax-exempt financing. So nicely done, Matt. Appreciate that. And I appreciate you trying to add another workday in June. The board to get their money out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to point out my typo there? All right. Thank you, Michael. All right. With that,
Okay,
we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
We have the recommendation. I guess right now, if anybody, the board has questions or comments, or anybody listening in. Okay, if not, on page 10, we've got Board Order A1, adopt resolution, reimbursement of capital expenditures from bond proceeds. And again, this is a no-cost item to AVAC.
This is Frank. I'll make a motion. We accept it.
We have a motion by Director Donato. Do we have a second?
This is Director Miller. I'll second.
We have a second by Director Miller. There's no further questions or comments. Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for calling in, Samuel and Michael.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a great evening.
The number of financing authority, we had the one item on that. So a motion would be in order to adjourn and reconvene to a regular board meeting.
Mr. President, I'll move to adjourn financing and reconvene the regular meeting.
Okay, we have a motion by Dr. Mercy.
Mr. President, this is Rob. I second that motion.
In a second, but, and then we have a second. Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Thank you, everyone. It's a little different than what we usually do, but anyway, we got through it. Now we're back to our regular agenda. Item number 9, new business. And consideration and possible action to approve a resolution, the appointment of the person, officer director. Okay, that's for the directors.
Yeah.
For director divisions 4, 6, 7, and 1.
So I think I should present this, Mr. President. So as you are well aware, happily aware, the 4 persons running for district division offices in this year's election for AVAC all ran unopposed. And when that happens, you have the opportunity to so note and make a declaration that that's the case, adopt a resolution that goes to the appropriate Board of Supervisors to essentially appoint each one of these persons for another term, full term at their position. So with that, we recommend adoption of resolution R2419, which would appoint George M. Lane to the director for another term on Division 4. Would also R2420 would provide for the appointment of Audrey Miller to the director's position for another term, Division 6. Resolution 52421 would do the same for Gary Van Dam in another term in the office of Division 7. And finally, Resolution R2422 would provide for the appointment of Drew Mercy for another term, full term, in the office of Director of Division 1. And staff recommends that the board adopt all 4 resolutions, which you can do in one motion if you choose.
Can I add something? That Director Mercy is just to complete the term. It's 2 years, not 4.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's fine.
Mr. President, this is Rob. I move approval of resolutions R2419, R2420, R2421, and R2422.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have a second?
Yeah, this is Director Donato, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion, a second from Director Donato.
Hate for that to die for lack of a second.
Motion or second.
So if there's no any further questions or comments, Madam Secretary, get a roll call.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes,
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Congratulations. That moves on to, okay, that moves on to item 9B1, Finance Committee. So we're going to go back to Director Donato.
okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, the Finance Committee met last week, and this is item 9B1. Consider impossible action to accept and file the check registry list with a period of September 12th through this October 2nd, 2024. And our General Manager, Matt, will give us an overview.
All right. Thank you, Director Donato. So on page 24 of your board packet is the beginning of our checklist for the period September 12th through October 2nd. We went through this in detail with the Finance Committee last week. On the first page, item number 1 is a payment to DWR for just over $2.9 million or $2.09 million. This is for delivery of roughly 10,500 acre feet during the month of August here to the valley. Most of that water was recharged within the West Side Water Bank, but quite a bit was used directly at our treatment facilities, both the Port Sill Water Treatment Plant as well as the East Side Water Treatment Plant, and a little bit supplied to Palmdale Water District for treatment for the Acton service area. So pretty good volume of water delivered during the month of August. We're going to see that taper off as the weather gets cooler. And Tom Barnes is going to give a report this evening under GM report to talk about where we're at with water supply this year. We also went through the various credit card expenses with the committee. On the second page, we get into the board approved items where we have various JPIA expenses, payment to Palmdale Water District for the treatment that I just mentioned. Also a progress payment to EDM Payne, who's performing our audit for the agency. And that audit report should be presented to the Finance Committee next month, during the month of November. So that's getting wrapped up as we speak. Moving on, page 3 through 5 is most of it's operation and maintenance items. Nothing really jumped out there. And then lastly, we do have a few items associated with the High Desert Water Bank on the operation and maintenance of that water bank, and all of those costs are reimbursed by Metropolitan. And you can see that on page 29 of your board packet. And then on page 30, we provide a detail of what's included in the various credit card expenses for the various managers for the agency. And then down at the bottom of that page, we give detail on any costs associated with travel or conferences. So be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. This is Director Donato. I'll move on 9B3 that we accept the check registry.
Second, this is Keith.
If we have a motion, second, Director Donato and Director Dias. If there's no further questions or comments, Madam Secretary.
That's 9B1.
9B1.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
I don't think so.
Yeah.
George Lane.
Yes.
What about me?
I'm sorry,
forgot
Frank.
me.
Skipped you.
I made the yes.
Okay, motion carried. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, item, so,
9B2.
yeah. 9B2, this is consider possible action, approve the purchase order with Sierra Construction and excavation for emergency leak repairs on the east feeder in the not to exceed the amount of 121,905.06. And our operations manager, Mr. Bozigian, is going to update us on that.
Thank you, Director Donato. Good evening. So if you recall, we discovered a leak in the east feeder back in July of this year. And it's on 177th Street East, just north of Avenue O. And that's where the east feeder ends and goes into an LA County Waterworks turnout. So it was an emergency. We called Sierra Construction, who's done a lot of work for AVEC, and they came out, responded very quickly, and excavated the area, found out what the leak was, ordered the appropriate parts to make the repair. So we have a few pictures we'll show you so you can kind of get a feel for what it was. Holly, if you could advance, there you go. So this is where the leak was, kind of in the middle of a neighborhood, in the asphalt, of course. And this is the pipe that was leaking. This is a 16-inch diameter steel pipe, mortar lined and coated. And you can see the leak is right here. This is a 90-degree fitting. So what the contractor did was he welded the pipe to the fitting, which is done all the time. But what you're supposed to do when you have a small diameter pipe where you can't crawl inside and mortar the inside after it's welded, you're supposed to put these 4-inch hand holes, and you reach in and you mortar the inside, and then they put these real thick steel plugs and cover it all up so you're protected. So none of that was done, unfortunately. And what you're seeing is 40 years of corrosion finally working its way through the weld. So next slide, Holly. So how do you fix this without shutting down our main customer, LA County Waterworks, at 165th Street, where our next isolation valve was? Well, you install what's called a line stop. You're going to be seeing a lot of these in the future, I think. What they do is they weld this flange onto the pipe. Then they bolt this gate valve onto it. And next slide, Holly. This is what the device looks like. It's called a line stop device. And essentially what it is, this is bolted onto the valve. It's a temporary valve is all it is. And you can install it under pressure. They cut a hole in the pipe under pressure. This goes down, expands, and it completely isolates the leak. So now we can work on it and still keep our upstream customer, which serves most of Lake Los Angeles, in water. Next slide, Holly. Okay, so this is the area, pretty deep, excavated out. They chipped the mortar off because this is where they're going to make their cut. And we'll go to the next slide. And this is the pipe that's been removed. We thought, you know what, let's put a valve while we're doing this. As long as we're cutting the pipe out, let's install a line valve, an isolation valve. AVEC is a distribution system. We're not a retail system, so there's not a lot of isolation valves. So when we do have a leak and have to cut pipe out, if it seems like the right spot, we'll put a valve. So this is them craning in the parts. And next slide. And this is, you can see part of the repair pipe. They're getting ready to make the connection. And last slide, I believe, Holly, next one. Okay, so the repair has been made. The valve has been installed. And we're back in business. So the total cost of this repair, time and materials. When you do a job like this, it has to be time and materials because you don't know what's down there. They submitted all of their paperwork, labor, materials, everything. Joe Roberts, our engineering, our local resident engineer, looked it all over, verified those are correct. Operations looked them over. We feel those are correct charges. So it came out to $121,905.06. Couldn't get them to knock off the 6 cents, so we got to pay it. So that's, the good news is the pipe's repaired. bad news. It definitely is an expensive repair. This is about the 6th leak we've seen in the last 3 years. Our systems are aging. So, but I am going to leave you with some good news. AVEC has 200 miles of pipeline, ranging from 5-foot diameter to 12-inch diameter. So 200 miles, they're usually 40-foot joints. That works out to about 26,000 connections or gaskets. And none of the other ones are leaking yet. So that's the good news. So hope you guys sleep well at night knowing that.
Always looking for the silver lining.
There's got to be. You know, I'm an optimist. So anyway, that's the final cost. We feel that they did a good job, and we recommend, of course, paying CR Construction.
Yeah, thank you, John. Is there any questions from John?
I had one question. That pipeline's 40 years old, John?
Yeah, about 40, a little over 40.
Did our guys help at all with that project, or was it all?
No, all we did, well, I mean, we helped initially with pumping the hole out and doing all that, but usually when you do a T&M, you just stay out of their way. Because usually you can make it more expensive if you try to help.
How long did it take to repair?
The actual, once they got the permits and everything, the actual repair was probably, I don't know, Joe, was it a week? It was about a week to make the repair. The good thing is 177th Street turnout, the county rarely uses that turnout. So that was a good thing. But upstream, 165th, that they push a lot of water through there. So that line stop was a blessing for sure.
So nobody was without water?
Nobody was without water.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question. Do we have a long-term capital improvement plan to replace part of our system, or how does that work?
I think Frank asked that exact question at Finance, Matt.
Yeah, that is part of our long-term capital plan, is looking at replacement of aged infrastructure. And if you remember, part of our reserve policy, that's why we have a healthy reserve policy, is to plan for that eventual replacement of aged infrastructure. And then that's built into our rate structure as well. We look out in the future, make sure we're generating revenue to fund that.
And I thought we did, but like, when do we start replacing 40, 50, 60?
When they break.
Well, we hate to wait until things happen. We want to be a little proactive. We're looking right now, Joe and Justin have been working really hard looking at inspection services to help inspect these pipelines. They're very expensive. Inspection is very expensive. So we're looking for other ways to determine what shape the pipelines are in. I wish I had a definitive answer for you, but I don't.
And when we do replace long stretches of pipe, what's the process?
Well, so far we haven't had to replace any long stretches. It's just been repaired.
You're trying to retire before we have to, so I'm trying to get an answer.
Yeah, well, that would be the engineer would have to look at it. We could put jumpers around where the leaks are. We can lay surface main if we had to. Our goal would be, no matter what, nobody should be out of water. Keeping in mind, AVEC is a secondary interruptible source, but that's still, we want to keep people in water, and there's multiple ways that we can do that. I think one of the best ways is using these line stops, and if we can line stop on either side of a leak, no matter how long it is, a lot of our systems we can backfeed, okay, through another like the south feeder parallel, we can backfeed water, keep people in water. But there's a lot of ways. You can lay surface main and you can do all kinds of things. But none of it's cheap.
Yeah, John, but that inspection service should go a long way, should it not? Yeah. Inspection service?
Inspection service, we're looking at it on the west feeder right now to inspect that section that we've had problems with. There's no guarantee they're going to find everything, but yes, it should give you a good indication of what shape the pipe's in.
But the problem we had right now, that was preventable. It wasn't done how it was supposed to have been done.
I would say 100% yes. The interior of the pipe was never coated.
So hopefully, some of these pipes should go for 100 years.
If they're put in right, yeah. LADWP has pipes that are 100 years old, so yeah, they should last 100 years.
Look at the aqueduct right now. That was done in what, 1912, 1916?
The LA Aqueduct?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was Mulholland's project,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's still going.
110, 12 years old.
Right.
Or more.
It's all about inspection. When you're putting something in, having it inspected correctly. And now that we have, Joe and Justin, a lot of the in-house projects we do, they inspect them. And so we know we're getting what we're paying for. But what was done 50 years ago, I mean, we just hope it was right.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more questions from John?
Thanks,
Okay,
John.
this Director Donato, I'll move on Board Order 9B2 that we accept the emergency repair and the amount not to exceed 905.06.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Donato, and we have a second by
Mr. President, I second that motion.
Director Parrish. If there's no further questions, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Yep. Motion carried. Yeah, thank you. Well done. That'll move us on to water projects, and that's Director Miller.
Hello, thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to give this over to Matt.
Yeah, Matt?
All right. Thank you, Director Miller. So item 9C1 is consideration and possible action on award of contract for the Leona Valley Tank Rehab Project. We have contract to consider to Cal Sierra Construction in the not to exceed amount of $1.937 million. Our senior engineer, Joe Roberts, is going to present on this item. Joe did a lot of the legwork on putting the specs and the plans together and putting this out to bid, working with the contractors that we're going to bid on the project. So I'll turn it over to Joe, and going to walk through the presentation that we presented to the Water Projects Committee.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, directors. Like you mentioned, today we have the Leona Valley Tank Rehab Project. A little background, it was placed out to bid on September 11th, and that was publicly advertised. And the project includes the complete recoating and structural rehabilitation of our 1 million gallon welded steel tank. So 2 contractors attended the mandatory bid meeting, but ultimately only one submitted a bid, and that was Cal Sierra Construction, who has no relation to what John just mentioned. It's a completely different contractor. Their bid price was $1,937,350. And they currently hold a Class A and a C33 painting license. We contacted 4 different project references, and they each had positive comments. To kind of paint the full picture, we are also going to be hiring a specialty inspection service, and that'll be for the coating work and then as well as the structural. We expect that to be somewhere between 3 and 5% of this bid price. If there's any questions, otherwise we can move on to the recommendation.
Go ahead and proceed, please.
Okay. All right. So the Water Projects Committee and staff recommend the board award a contract to Cal Sierra Construction for the not to exceed low bid amount of $1,937,350 for the Leona Valley Tank Rehab Project.
Okay, is there any further questions or comments for the board?
I have one question. Are they taking the old tank out?
No, the old tank will stay in its current form. Just if there's any corroded or rotten out areas, they'll patch those or replace them as needed.
Well, is this your recommendation from the committee?
Actually, Audrey's the chairman.
Oh, excuse me, Audrey. Yeah. Audrey, your recommendation.
We recommend we proceed with the contract for the 1,937,350.
Okay, if there's no further,
Sorry, I'll move on that.
we have a motion by
Agenda
Director Miller.
9C1.
I'll second. Director, who said, I was in a second, go ahead.
This is Keith, I'll second. We have a motion and a second, Director Miller, Director Dias, second. If there's no further questions, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Yeah, thank you much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe, and good job on putting this all
And
together.
so we're looking at doing this during the winter months, this
Correct.
next few months.
Yeah, gonna start right away, getting the contracts in place, get the insurance bonds, etc., and get the contractor mobilized so we're ready to go when winter months hit and the demand is at its lowest point.
When will it be completed, do you think?
By end of it.
Good.
Of 25. Yeah.
Okay, Director Burrs, now it's your committee.
It is, and I will turn it over to Matt to lead this discussion.
All right. Thank you, Director Paris. So this is our monthly opportunity to review the Water Master agenda and provide direction to our representative, Director Paris. So the timing is a little off this month because the way our board meetings lined up. So we don't have the final agenda for the Water Master meeting. We just had the draft. And just today, we had the advisory committee of the Water Master met. So we don't have the written report to refer to, just what we heard listening into that committee. So there's a few items that are going to be on the Water Master's agenda that I wanted to go through with the board this evening and have a discussion and provide direction. So the first one is discussion on Water Master Administrator proposals and interviews. So if you recall from the last Water Master meeting, the Water Master Board interviewed the two candidates, Regional Government Services, also known as RGS, and the second one was Provost and Pritchard. If you recall also, the fees that were proposed by these two consulting firms was pretty similar. Ms. Kyle mentioned those fees earlier in the public comment of what roughly the monthly cost would be. I'll give my highlights of the advisory committee's discussion today, if you'd like. So it was a lively discussion. As Ms. Kyle mentioned, there was the first vote that was taken was to reject both these proposals. It was 6-5 on that, 6 in favor of the committee rejecting both proposals. There was also a lot of discussion about AVAC providing the services for the Water Master. There was a lot of positive comments about AVAC, and that's very humbling to hear how the entire advisory committee feels about the AVAC staff performing the tasks that they have been over the last year. They have done a great job. And then after that initial vote, then they kind of did a roundtable to see who, if they had to choose between one of the two candidates listed on the screen, who would they favor? And based on 2 rounds of votes, it seemed like, from what I heard, there was more votes in favor of RGS over Provost. So those are the highlights from the advisory committee meeting this morning on this discussion. We'll wait and see what the written report says in it from the advisory committee chair. But speaking as GM of AVAC, I think our board should give direction to Director Paris to see how the process plays out next Wednesday. You know, we've all committed to going through this process with the water master. We all voted in favor of going through an RFP, and I think we see the process through. So that's my comments or thoughts. And I guess I'll turn it over to the board and see if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Madam. Oh, go ahead, Frank.
Okay, thank you. This is Director Donato. We had the committee spearheading it, but we felt the same way. We felt that let the group look at it, digest it, and hear what is going out, and we kind of sit back and let them figure out if this is what they want. The only comment I want to make, and I'm not, you got to correct me, Matt, if I'm wrong, but everybody wants to have AVAC there because we're less expensive. The question I have for you is, when you charge the water master, does that include the rental of the AVAC facilities, the power cost, the phone systems, the insurance cost? Are those also included in the overhead of the billing we give the AV water master?
No, Frank, there's no overhead currently charged. So what we charge, or what this past year we've charged to the water master, is the hourly rate for each of the individuals that work on the water master, as well as the payroll taxes, the health insurance associated with that employee, and the retirement cost.
So it's not the umbrella. So it's all the internal guts of the facility. And I'm only bringing this up because what happens if Roseman Community Service District or Quartz Hill Water District or White Fence Farms District want to use have the same facility rental that we would become their offer the same facilities? We would have to offer that, wouldn't we?
Well, so I'll compare it to, like what we provide to Metropolitan for the High Desert Water Bank. So when we put together the budget for the High Desert Water Bank, we include all those things that I just mentioned, salaries, health insurance, payroll taxes, workers' comp, and retirement. But we also include a category known as G&A, or general and administrative, and that's pretty common for public agencies because that captures all the costs that you mentioned, Director Donato. It captures your building cost, utility cost, software cost on computers. There's a number of things that's included in G&A, and so that is typically not charged.
So that G&A is not being charged to the AV Water Master.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now I want to say something to everybody that's listening. I'm not against the AV Water Master. I think they're doing a great job. I just have a little bit of a difficulty when everybody wants AVAC to do it, but it's not the true cost compared to the two other people that are applying for that position. I just want to bring it on whenever put that on the table, because it's important for them to understand that that they're getting a discount. And I think what you brought up, Matt, was a very important point, is what we're charging Met, and Met doesn't even use our facilities. They're not using our boardroom for anything. So I think everybody needs to look at that and come up with something that the other taxpayers that are part of the 20-some hundred square miles of the agency boundaries, how do we deal with that? So anyway, that's just something I want to bring out, and you answered the question. So that might throw that in there, and then see if the regional government, RGS or Provo and Pritchard's, how far off they are from doing this. So that's just a thought. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other comments or questions?
Mr. President, I had a comment. Our Water Master Committee did meet, and as Frank said, it was our recommendation to the board that we go forward with the process. My job as chairman is to try to get consensus of 5 votes, and that's sometimes very difficult, but I think we all agreed to do the RFP process. We have 2 what I think are acceptable good candidates. I agree the pricing is going to be different, and Avek has done a great job keeping the pricing down and doing a wonderful job administering, and is humbling to get all the good comments. I think it is really good for the public to see the quality of our staff and what a great job they do, as they do for AVAC, they have done for the Water Master Board. But AVAC has a lot of projects going on and a lot of very important things going on in this valley to provide water for this valley. As we all know, the water banks, everything we're doing to do our water management plans. So my recommendation, same as committee's recommendation, is that we go forward. We try to do our best to get consensus. It's going to take 5 votes to get an administrator approved, and it's going to take a lot of work to do that.
You know, Rob, a comment. In the advisory committee, they didn't have a clear recommendation on that. It's still more controversial. We've had some good, comments from the audience today and on the phone.
Sure.
So is this something that the committee can look at and talk about, and gives everybody a chance to digest it a little bit more, come back to the board with your feelings, what you think the consensus is? And
George, the decision will be made in closed sessions. So any deliberation in closed session, I don't think I can come back and talk to the committee or the board about. Certainly, I take direction from you and the board. My recommendation is that as the chairman, I need to work towards getting a consensus of the group, or finding out what options are available or what options the group wants. So obviously I can report back to the board on recommendations, and obviously I'll get some advice from Craig, our water master attorney, but I work at the pleasure of the board, right?
But I think we're talking about just taking into consideration with the advisory committee, with their comments, we're today, and just not make a decision, but discuss it, with the board, and have time to digest it a little bit more, and come back to this board, and just with the comments, I'm not asking anything that was done in closed session, but what the comments were, what the thinking is, especially rolling. As to the cost involved.
I guess I'd like more clarification from the board on what the expectation would be, because as chairman of the Water Master Board, I'm going to try to get a consensus of what everybody can live with. It's kind of like a mediation. We may not all be pleased with the outcome, but if we're all a little upset with the outcome, it's a good decision. We've done that in the Water Master Board many times.
That makes sense, but I don't know if there's consensus yet on the AVAC.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to put that together, and what I can understand. And we know everybody is not agreeable to it, and so we need a consensus on the AVAC board.
So let me try to understand the direction, and obviously I need input from a majority of the board to get there, but what I recommend the AVAC does is go in good faith, try to build consensus with the other 4 members, find out where they all stand. If we can't get consensus, find out why we can't get consensus. consensus and maybe work with the board on what recommendations we can make to go forward with choosing an administrator. Certainly I can do that. And ask for another 30 days from, in fact, I think our meeting will be sooner than that.
Actually, it'll be
Or
a
longer
little
than
later because we're not going to have a November
We're not
meeting.
going to have a November meeting.
It'll be early December.
Okay, let's, that's an alternative, but what I would like to ask for, and I think it'd be, worthwhile, if each board member, if they would like to, they could just speak up and which way they think it should go.
Okay.
Until, I don't want to get anybody by surprise, but, Audrey, would you like to start?
Mr. President, yes, and I'm on the committee with Frank and Rob, and pretty much we would like to see, they're both great candidates. I think this has to play out before we make any other consideration whether AVAC makes a bid in there or we keep them on. Both candidates, we were a little split on who we liked the best out of the two, but we pretty much agreed that we want to go through the process and with these two candidates and see how the water master, what comes out of the water master meeting.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Frank, would you care to make a comment?
Yeah, I concur with both of them. It was kind of my suggestion that, let them work with it and work some things out, and AVAC comes back, and make a decision, in time. So that's my feeling too. I think some of this decision makings should not be always AVAC. There's other players involved in this, and I think they should voice their opinion and give opportunity to the organizations that they're representing, and then we come back and we make a decision.
Thank you. Keith, would you care to make a comment?
Certainly. I think Matt said it best early on and I agree with his recommendation to allow the process to play out as originally intended.
Okay, thank you. Gary, would you care to make a comment?
Yes. Well, first of all, I don't think we can afford them. These two bids that have come in, I believe both of them are around $20,000 a month. AVAC right now, I believe we're at 10,000 a month. So 10,000 a month. And even if we did pay the G&A cost, it would be a lot less than that. And I'd like to see maybe AVAC place an individual to help along with the process of the water master, so that way they don't have to put it all on them. They can kind of share it. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Drew?
I think I agree with most of the board members to go ahead and see what happens at the meeting and the discussion, and then come back, and if it's helpful in that for us to reconsider, then I'm open to that.
Okay, thank you. Matt, would you mind just kind of restating what you did with the first, but we would look at it, into my understanding, with the recommendation being come back to the board?
Come back to the AVAC board?
Yes.
So, what I stated and what I heard, and I think Director Paris was kind of trying to get there with, we're going into the Water Master meeting next week with an action item. So the anticipation is that action has to be taken next Wednesday, or will be taken, if there can be a consensus. I don't think we have time to where we play, if the board, AVAC board wants to consider AVAC as an option, I don't think the process laid out by the water master allows that. because we're going to go into the water master meeting with a discussion to make a decision. And I'm just thinking through what that would look like if at the 11th hour AVAC said, time out, we want to punch it another month or over a month to have more discussion. And that's why I personally think the way it's laid out, we need to see how it plays out on next Wednesday. See what the feedback is from the other board members on the water master, see which way they're leaning before we just throw AVAC's hat in the ring.
Now, some of the directors, I did hear that we talked about it, and I thought I understood it, and they would come back to the AVAC report. Maybe I didn't understand that correctly, but now this is a controversial item.
Yeah.
And it's a costly item. And so if it's on the agenda or not, it's not uncommon for things to be put off.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. President, can I be heard on that? I want to make it real clear what I believe the committee's recommendation is, and what my recommendation is AVAC historically, and I don't think you were here when this discussion was taking place, but there was a decision made by this board that we did not want to continue being the administrator. That's how the first RFP occurred. We went out with an RFP, we went through many interviews, we hired a new administrator. That new administrator did not work out for mainly pricing reasons, just what we're hearing now. Then when that happened, AVAC volunteered to take over the administration. We had a 5-0 vote from the Water Master Group board to accept that with the understanding that a new RFP would go out. A new RFP went out. AVAC did not send in a proposal. That was a conscious decision. And so now we have two candidates that are both good candidates. And I recognize there's budgeting issues that I think are being brought up, and rightfully so. I don't think we want to see, if we chose one of those candidates, we would go in there with the desire that we're not going to have change orders. We're not going to be paying a lot more than what they have budgeted for and that they've told us. And I think that's going to be a central discussion at the Water Master in closed session, I would imagine, what the costs are going to be. But at the end of the day, we aren't one of the ones, we aren't a candidate. That's not what the action item is. So if we can get a consensus of 5 votes, that's not even a consensus. If we can get 5 votes, that's everyone agreeing on one of those candidates, we need to accept that candidate and go forward. If we can't, then I think that's when the AVAC board can look at options of how we can work towards a consensus for one of the candidates. If we never get a consensus, then that's going to be up to the Water Master Board to figure that out. My job and main job is to work towards a consensus as the chairman. I think you tie my hands if you recommend that I try to tell them to punt again. We did that last meeting. We were successful in doing that, and for good reason, to listen to what the advisory committee said. But I do not feel comfortable punting this another month if we can get 5 votes for one of those candidates. And I believe clearly that that's Matt's recommendation. Frank's on board with that. Audrey's on board with that. Keith's on board with that. Drew is on board with that. I understand Gary's concerns and I understand your concerns. But I think we have a consensus of the board for what Matt has recommended and what I'm recommending. Where that goes, I don't know.
Well, hey Rob, you've done a good job presentation. I think it's it's correct what you said, but it is controversial because the advisory committee members very much of a split vote. And so if it's correct or not, which you probably are correct, but is that the right direction to go? And so, but we're looking at a consensus of the board, so we need to make a decision, fairly soon. So we've heard what Rob's recommendation is, and I think we either go ahead with it or we don't. So I think if any directors do not agree with that and like to see it come back to the board, now's the time to let themselves be heard.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see, there's a couple things. One is, if we did place the administrative staff, I believe they have a 2-year contract. Is that true? I'd like to see it brought down to 1 year. And I think 2 years is way too long if we did place an administrator. So I'd like to see that moved, 1. And 2, I'd like the advisory board to be listened to, like George said. They had their meeting, they spoke their piece, and basically nobody's hearing them. They took a vote.
Can I respond to that, Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah. The Water Master Board has, for the last 8 years, listened very closely to what the advisory committee has recommended. And we have respected their decisions. We've listened to them. They're an integral part of the Water Master administration. And so I kind of take exception to that, Gary, but I understand why you said that. And the advisory committee, as I've had to say a few times as chairman of the Water Master Board, is an advisory committee. We listen very closely to them. They advise, and we have a job to run the Water Master Board. It takes 5 votes for any decision to be made. I don't know where that's going to happen, but I can tell you every member of that board has been very respectful of the advisory committee, has listened to them, and we always go through the minutes they give and their presentation, looking at that before any vote on any subject is taken. And I'm sure that's going to happen again. So I would take exception that we don't listen to the advisory committee. We are going to certainly consider everything that Galen and Julie talked about tonight, and John Calandri's letter will come up. All of that will be discussed, but we are not the board that makes the final decision. We are a member of a board that has to work really hard to get 5 members to pass anything. And I think all of you have seen how difficult that can be and how hard I work to make that happen.
Okay, a comment. The recommendation was brought up about doing a 1-year contract, address this to you, Rob, and to Matt. Is that feasible to do 1 year?
Yeah, that was brought up by Director Lane or Van Dam, and it was also brought up today at the advisory committee that was a recommendation from somebody on the advisory committee. I can't remember if there was overwhelming support of that idea. It seemed like it was. Didn't vote on it, yeah. But that is something that we can may have a discussion and provide guidance.
Let me ask, is anybody in the board, do they object to that?
What did the RFP call?
So the RFP calls for a 2-year contract.
That's what they bid on.
Yeah, but my opinion is that doesn't need to be the final agreement.
Anything can be
negotiated in the final.
So it's certainly something we can bring up as a recommendation.
Yeah.
But that might be middle of the ground, see everything works out. And I don't think we need a vote on this issue. We usually need consensus. And I think we know what the consensus of the board is. So unless anybody wants to have a vote.
I have a question. And in terms of whatever the length of the contract is when it's up, what happens? And the reason I'm saying that is because going back last time we were in the position where the contract ended, but to get to cancel it or to have the other folks go away took 5 votes.
Yeah,
To me, I think if you have a contract for a certain amount of time, at the end, it goes away unless you have 5 votes to.
Well, here's the problem with that, and you're correct. If we say do a 1-year contract and the contract expires, and that they're going to be the administrators till we come up with another option. That's why we needed a 5-0 vote for AVAC to come back.
Well,
and to get anyway. So you're right, Drew.
Could you not have after a year, have a 60-day cancellation clause?
You could, but who's going to administer the water master?
No. Probably AVAC.
Well, probably, but we can't say that. We can say anything we want, but then we would need a 5-0 vote to get AVAC to take over.
But it's the same way if you have a 2-year, who's going to do it?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something.
Well, and George, same thing. If I can't get a 5-0 vote, as long as this board allows AVAC to continue doing it, I would imagine AVAC would do it until we can get a 5-0 vote to change it, and hopefully we can get a 5-0 vote to change it.
Okay, so I think we have a consensus. Rob, do you feel? You go with the consensus.
I feel we have a tortured consensus.
I'd like to make one comment, Director Lane, or President Lane. On those hidden costs, Rob, that's where we, you say that you're going to lay it out where there's going to be a certain amount that's going to be spent. How do you know that?
Well, it's kind of, and you've been ringside seat for the last 8 years, Gary. Same that we've done with our water master engineer. We've done a really good job keeping them on their budget to the extent of not doing things. I mean, that's why it's taken us, 4 or 5 years to get a model, is we budgeted how much every year they could work on the model. I would say that's what we're going to have to do with whatever administrator we have is budget and make sure they stay on budget. Teresa and Peter have set up a really good system where we're watching our budget very closely from month to month. And I would imagine that system would continue.
Right.
But
wasn't it on Hallmark that we had all those, costs and fees?
Yeah, Hallmark, I think that was the reason we no longer have Hallmark was all the change orders and the disruption that caused. If we choose one of these administrators, they know what happened to Hallmark. They know a lot of why that happened. And I think they have been really clear to us that they will work within the budget they give us. If we want extra things, then it's going to take a 5-0 vote to get extra things. But somebody had a comment on here.
Okay, I think, is there anything else we need to go over this for tomorrow?
I think I have a good consensus. Thank you. Matt, anything else we have?
Well, yeah, let me just hit on a couple items, should be fairly quick. Another item on the Water Master agenda for next Wednesday is approval of a contract with the CJ Brown and Company for the audit services. It's a 1-year contract, not to exceed amount of $11,700. The good thing that we've seen with CJ Brown is they only invoice on actual cost spent. So this last year we had a contract for roughly $7,500 and they came in at like $4,500. So we're hoping the same for next year. A lot of that savings was probably due to the good work that Teresa Yates does on the accounting. And then we also are going to review the budget for calendar year 2025. So the proposed budget is in your packet on page 58. The assessments are proposed at $9.50, so unchanged from 2024 assessment. So it shows total revenue of just over $1 million, actually $1,014,000. $1,036,000. And then expense of about $979,000. So there's a little bit of a surplus there that could get added to what we call the stabilization fund. So if everything works out in the proposed 2025 budget, the Water Master would have roughly $470,000 in reserves or the stabilization fund at the end of 2025. And this budget does include the admin services cost based on the higher of the two proposals. It includes the cost for Provost and Pritchard at $248,000, which is their base contract, plus $12,000 for transition costs. We also, the Water Master staff also included $40,000 for AVAC expense if there's training and additional tasks needed from AVAC staff. So that it's padded a little bit on the expense side. Obviously, depending on which way this goes, budget could look better based on that. And the draft budget is just being.
And the training, why would?
Well, anytime you switch from AVAC staff to some outside consulting firm to take over, there's a lot of questions and training that the new firm needs.
And AVAC should pay for that? No.
Well, no, the Water Master would pay for it.
What's the water? Well, that's,
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
So we included $40,000 to cover AVAC
They
staff.
can bring themselves up to speed, and if that costs, they should pay for it themselves.
So I believe, George, when our assessments we were first assessed, I believe it was $5 a acre foot.
That's correct.
Today it's how much?
$9.50.
When did that go up?
So it went up in late 2023.
And all the production right holders pay those assessment fees, Matt?
Yes. Anybody that has a production right or pays the replacement water, they all get assessed $9.50 per acre foot.
Okay, is there anything further, Matt?
And then there's one new production application for the East Side School District located on 70th Street East, roughly in Avenue H. They're requesting 63.3 acre feet per year of new production. They currently do not have a production right, and they're not a party to the judgment. They're trying to make that right by intervening in the judgment and requesting a new production of 63 acre feet per year. So they would have to pay all the costs associated with that. So that
The yearly cost, isn't it?
yeah, they'll pay the annual assessment as well as the replacement water cost.
Do they have a well out there right now?
They do. It was down for a few years, but they recently got the well up and running and installed a new meter on the well.
Okay, if there's nothing further, we'll move on.
All right, that's all we have.
I'm good.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you, everybody. Most of the things we agree about 100%. Occasionally we don't agree on everything, but we did it in a very good manner.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah. Matt, we're going to move on to you, General Manager's report.
All right, just a few slides. So current flows at the various AVAC facilities. Top left chart shows our 4 water treatment plants. You see the flows, the current flows listed in the middle. They're starting to drop off a little bit with the shorter days, a little cooler weather. Down below that, we have a chart that shows what we're pumping from our stored water at our water banks. The only water bank that is recovering water right now is the West Side Water Bank. Most of that flow is going to the north to meet the demands of the north feeder. A little bit is going to LA County Waterworks at 80th and H. And top right shows our current groundwater banking activity. We stopped banking at all of the AVAC facilities about a week or two ago. just to save some water, table A water that we have and carry over for next year in the event it's dry. So, but we are continuing to bank at Upper Amargosa Creek on behalf of the various partners there. And we're also continuing to bank at the High Desert Water Bank. We're currently flowing about 220 acre feet per day at the High Desert Water Bank.
Great.
So it's pretty good news there. You'll see in the notes, number 5, LA County District 37, which serves the Acton area. They've had some issues with a couple wells, and they've seen an increase in nitrate levels in their groundwater production. So they told us that they were going to increase flows for the Acton service area. So we'll be seeing that soon from them. And so I have to report on that summary. And let's see, I'm going to invite Tom Barnes up, talk about our current water supply situation. Go ahead, Tom.
Tom, it's been a while.
Yes, it has. Thanks, Matt. Good evening, directors. I'd like to just review some of the agency's water supply goals first, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we're doing this year here in 2024. So our first goal objective for the agency is to meet our customers' demands. And that's what we want to do for this year. Obviously, every year we put that as our number one goal. We also want to maximize our carryover in San Luis Reservoir so that we do have water available for the following year. So we're allowed to carry that over. And at the same time, we want to manage any risks that may be there for spill. If we do have a heavy water year and we have carryover in San Luis Reservoir, there's a potential for that to spill. So we want to always be looking closely at that and make sure we're managing our deliveries properly. The third goal is to meet our banking goal of 3 years of supply. If we had a 5% state water project allocation for 3 years, and then if we had 45,000 acre feet per year of demand, what would we want in our water bank for that to be able to protect us for 3 years? And that number is about 113,000 acre feet we'd like to have in storage. So that's another goal. Number 4 on there is to meet our exchange and transfer obligations in 2024. There's no obligations, both going in and out from the agency. Also, we want to maximize our return on investment in regards to these transfers and exchanges and how we manage our surplus waters each year.
Can I ask a question about that? When we talk about return on investment of transfers and exchanges and stuff, really we're talking about building up our surplus so that we can purchase more water for our banking operations. So maybe in the future we can really clarify that for the public because we really don't have a rate of return. What we have is funds that are going back to buy bank water. I mean, Teresa will give a report at some point, but we have millions and millions and millions of dollars invested in bank water, and that's where our funds go to on these transfers. Mm-hmm. I think, we should really start clarifying that if you agree with that.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, normally rate of return and that type of thing is related to finances. This is the connection between water supply and finances. Yeah.
This is what you have done, and all of our Matt, Peter, and you and the whole staff have worked really hard at managing our water supplies and increasing our banks, but that's at a huge cost to this agency. So I just think the public needs to be aware that when we talk about these things, we really talk about how do we get additional funds to be able to bank additional water.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we don't want to put ourselves in that.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. So I've reviewed kind of the agency's goals for water supply, general goals, and then now we want to see how we're doing this year here in 2024. So as far as meeting those goals, we have met all of our customers' demands, which are approximately 40,000 acre feet this year, which is our standard, pretty close to our standard annual demands. Also, we'll have over 25,000 acre feet of carryover supply in San Luis Reservoir at the end of this year. And so we'll be looking to use that here at our Corso water treatment plant primarily. We're meeting our banking goal, that 3 years demand at 5%. So we're just under the 113,000 acre feet of supply stored. And that's what we're looking at for the end of this year. And also, exchange and transfers obligations here in this year will be met. We have about 9,800 acre feet of water being transferred. 2,500 of that will be water actually transferred to Avek. The remainder will be water that will be returning back to our partners. Also, groundwater adjudicated rights at the end of this year. After the end of this year, we'll have an additional roughly about 28,000 acre feet that we can add to our available supply portfolio. So that'll help us out quite a bit. So we'll have that in addition to that 113,000 acre feet of storage.
And you're talking about our carryover?
Yeah, this is the groundwater adjudicated rights. Yeah, so our production rights, carryover rights.
Production,
these are
carryover.
And then it also includes return flows.
Return flows.
That AVEC gets.
Yeah, exactly. All
return flows.
Yeah.
Great.
So that's basically an overview of our goals. It's an overview of how we're doing this year. So I'd be able to field any questions or comments, further comments.
I had a question. When do we see our sales doing next year?
As far as customer demand, probably in about the 40,000. Yeah, between 38 to 40,000 acre feet sales.
Yeah, it should be fairly flat from what we're seeing today or this year.
Right.
Yeah. So good job to Tom. Just a shout out to him. You know, the top section of this graph is what we reviewed in late 2023 to set our goals for this calendar year. And as you can see what Tom just reviewed, he's done a good job managing the water supplies and doing all the transfers and scheduling, etc. So just want to acknowledge that.
I just had one comment, and it's probably longer range than tonight, but it seems to me as we near our 3-year goal that this board should start looking at increasing this to maybe a 4-year goal. I mean, we all know that if we look at what happened in Australia, they had a 10-year drought that was devastating to them. Our last couple of bouts have been pretty bad, and that we certainly are in a good situation right now, and we should think about adding another year to that goal. I don't know, did that come from our strategic management plan, or was that
the 3 years at 5% allocation was part of our strategic plan, and it's also currently in our urban water management plan that we approved back in 2020.
2020. So when's our next?
We'll be starting that process next year. DWR hasn't come out with the guidelines yet,
right?
But it's every 5 years.
And maybe, Mr. President, it's been a while since we have done a strategic management plan, and we have a few more new board members since we've done our last one. Maybe in 2024 we're looking at our IRWIN plan being due in 2025. Maybe it's time for us to start working towards our strategic management plan.
It's probably a good idea. Maybe after the first of the year, be able to look at it again.
Throw that on.
We'll ask Matt to keep that in mind.
I will actually, when we get to agenda items, I'll ask that it be put on the agenda first of the year.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
On that water supply, Rob, we need to be more optimistic. Hopefully we don't have 3 years of drought.
I want to be very optimistic, but very prepared. And I think, you've been a good mentor in that this agency has been incredibly prepared from all the great work you've done in the past.
Well, thank you.
I'm just trying to push it along.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. Yeah, good job, Tom. Thank you.
Good report, Tom. Thanks.
And I've got one more slide, just upcoming events and schedule. We have the Water Master meeting next week at 10 a.m. here at AVAC and on Zoom. Got the AV Edge Fall Forum on the 29th of October, 8 to noon. We got a couple holidays coming up, Veterans Day, November 11th, and Thanksgiving towards the end of November. And then I know a few directors have signed up for the upcoming Aqua Conference scheduled in Desert Springs area. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Okay, if there's no further questions, thank you. Director's reports.
Mr. President, this is Director Miller.
Yes, yeah. Yes.
I attended the groundwater conference. It was fantastic. It was great to see Arden Wells do her presentation and receive an award as well. I forget the name of it. Maybe Rob remembers, but
I have it on
that
green.
was
I'm waiting.
it was excellent conference. A lot of new connections made for us there. And then I also want to thank management for letting us go out and see the Edmonston pumping plant and then the After Bay on the aqueduct there for the west and the east feeders or branches. And then just seeing the High Desert Water Bank, they're very beautiful out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Audrey. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to just jump on what Audrey said real quick.
Yeah.
I think Gary will have some comments too, but I can just ditto everything that Audrey just said. The groundwater conference was great. I think it's something we should add to our list of conferences we should all think about going to. The level, this conference is different in Aqua in that it's really the industry leaders in the science of groundwater management are there, and I thought it was fantastic, and I hope we can add that. The other thing, Arden Wells, our water master engineer, she got the Emerging Groundwater Professional Award, and it was in recognition of a rising star in California's groundwater industry who contributed significantly to the GRA's mission and vision now and in the future. She gave a wonderful presentation about what has happened with our adjudication and about our water master board in our basin, and I'm going to ask her to maybe provide that at a future water master meeting. It was excellent. And then also the tour that I know you did a lot of the planning on that tour. It was great. I'd never seen the Edmonston pumping plant or the After Bay or all that infrastructure there, and just really was very informative. So thank you.
Great, good report. Is there anything further?
Yeah, I had a little comment. We did have a great time up there in Arden getting that award through Todd Groundwater, correct?
Yes.
So had a great time with that, and it was amazing that Edmonston pumping plant. And did I hear that right? There's 250 billion gallons of water being pumped.
I just can say a lot of water.
That's what I said. That's what I thought I heard. A lot of water going over the Hatchebees.
Well, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to attorney's report.
George, I don't have a report, but I'd like to add on that Edmonston plant. I actually condemned the pipeline from there to Tehachapi, and that, I think, is still the highest lift of that amount of water anywhere in the world.
But I bet that's something.
Yeah, it's something
impressive.
special to see. Anyway, that's all I have.
Definitely. Okay, is there anything further?
Yes. Mr. President, I just want to, I was up in Sacramento last week for work, but was able to attend a presentation by the Secretary of Cal EPA talking about water supplies and what they're facing in the environmental challenges that are coming in the years. And it just makes me very reassured that all the work AVEC's been doing to make that a meet our 3-year goal and look forward, I think is going to be very important.
Great. We've done a pretty good job on that. Okay, we'll move on to request for future agenda items.
Mr. President, I know I've been talking a lot, but real quick, I would like to, not the next meeting, but the first meeting of the first of the year, put on the agenda a consideration of doing a new strategic plan for AVEC, and obviously include in there increasing our water bank supplies to a 4th year.
I mean, I don't think we need a motion on that, but now that's something you can.
Yeah, I'll make a note and,
sometime after the first of the year.
yeah, we'll have a discussion about updating our plan.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we're down to, we do need to go into closed session, and so we'll motion to go into.
Mr. President, I'll move we go into closed session.
We have a motion by Director Mercy.
Second.
Second by Director Van Dam. Madam Secretary.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Let's take 5 minutes. Thank you everyone for attending.
Hey, Holly, I'm going to leave now. I can't attend the closed session.
Okay, very good. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Hey, Gary.
Recording stopped.
All that we ready?
Yep, back in open session.
Okay, yeah, thank you, everyone. I think a motion to adjourn, would be in order.
No reportable action.
No reportable action.
Mr. President, I move we adjourn.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
We have a second, Director Mercy. Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Yeah, we're adjourned. Everybody have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
Good night.
George. Night. Okay. Not easy, is it?